Welcome to the Flora podcast, a place where we help you create a life you're excited about. Today, we are going to talk about how to declutter and deprogram all of that expert advice that is cluttering up your mind and your day and your to-do list. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm Flora Sage, and for over 25 years, I've been helping women like you align into a life that you are wildly obsessed with by helping you clear the 9 types of clutter that are keeping you from a life that you love. What are those 9 types of clutter? They are mental, spiritual, emotional, digital, financial, daily, body, process, and environmental clutter. Please subscribe and follow to this feed so you get notified every time an episode is released. Today, we're going to dig into how to clear all that expert advice that clutters up your days, specifically your morning routine. Recently, I was speaking with a new client and she shared with me her goals for the year. She was all excited and she showed me how she had made this huge motivation board to keep her motivated and to remind her to do all the things. Well, one of the things on her board was journaling. Now, I've worked with this client in the past, and she had previously told me that she did not like journaling in any way, shape, or form. So I was really surprised to see this on her list. Another thing that she had on this motivation board was to read 10 pages a day. Again, because I'd worked with her in the past, I knew that she was a really avid reader, and to see this reminder to read only 10 pages seemed really odd. So I asked her about it, and she shared with me that she had recently completed the 75 Hard Challenge and was using this format as inspiration for her daily to-do list and her, quote unquote morning routine. And she said that she was having a lot of trouble feeling motivated, and she said that the list that she made herself felt daunting. So let me ask you a question. If you had no reference or framework for what a morning or daily routine looks like, what would you want to do? If no one had ever set the example of what's possible for your morning, how would you go about navigating your day? How would you go about navigating your life? Now I want you to think about, what is your dream life? What are your goals? What are your priorities? What are your responsibilities right now? What would feel good for you to do? What would support you in this season or phase of your life? Most of the experts that do these giant morning routines, and I've talked about this in previous podcasts and videos, most of these experts that are doing these really long morning routines, or even they may not be really long, but have lots of elements to them. Most of them have started these after they've achieved or made like really big successes, or they've already achieved and landed in their dream life. When they were hustling, when they were grinding, when they were maybe a single parent or a parent of multiples, multiple children, and they didn't have help, they probably didn't have time to do all of these things. Now, can it be done? Absolutely. Some people, it's the perfect routine for them. Others, for most people, it's not. Habits and routines change based on the phase or season of life that we're in. So I want you to think about, what was your high school morning routine? If you went to college, what was your college morning routine? If you were like me and went straight into the military after high school, what was your military morning routine? If you're working full-time, what is your morning routine? If you're working part-time, what is your morning routine? If you're raising babies or raising toddlers or raising teenagers, what are your morning routines for each of those phases? I know when I was raising babies and toddlers, it was very different than my morning routine when I was raising my teenagers. Now I'm an empty nester. If you're an empty nester, what does your morning routine look like? If you're a retiree, what does it look like? If you're building a business, if you're maintaining a business, building a relationship, or being single, Every single stage of your life, every phase of your life, every season of your life, your routines are going to be different. As you're listening to this, reflect on the different stages of your life, especially when you were really, really thriving. What were you doing? Chances are you were doing things that, one, you wanted to do, two, you did them when you wanted to do them, and three, you were doing those things that you knew were going to bring you closer to that thing that you really wanted in your life. Things were just in flow. They felt so good. And that's why you were thriving. So now think about what season of life that you're in right now. Are you trying to do a routine, whether it's the morning or the evening or after, whenever it is, but it's that quote unquote expert advice that you need to be doing this every single day, and you're forcing yourself to do things that really don't resonate with you? Think about, how does it feel when you're doing those things? It probably doesn't feel very good, right? It probably feels forced. Maybe you feel frustrated because while you're journaling, let's just say, maybe you're not a journaler. Maybe as you're journaling, you keep thinking, oh, I really want to be doing this, or I want to be doing that, or you're really, antsy to do something else or whatever, and your mind just isn't in it. I know for myself, there are a few select days of the month that I will sit down in the morning with my coffee after breakfast, and I will journal and plan and whatever. And then also, if I feel like I really want to mentally kind of dig into something, I write it out. But am I a natural journaler? Absolutely not. Some people love it. Some people are natural journalers. So if you find that something is natural for you, you just feel so good when you do it, that's a big, huge green flag for you to do something. But if you feel like you have to force yourself to do it and you're really struggling, that's a red flag. That should be addressed. Now, we're not talking about, if the doctor says you need to lift weights 3 times a week, you might get a little bit of pushback from your ego or, like mentally, oh, I really don't want to do this, whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those expert lists that we've all seen of get up at 5 a.m., run 5 miles, take an ice plunge, meditate, read 10 pages, all these things, drink a gallon of water. Even when I was in the Marine Corps, I could not drink a gallon of water. So, some of these things just aren't practical for some people. For some people, yes, they absolutely are. But I want you to think back to a time when you really felt good, that you felt like you were, really thriving. And again, chances are you were doing things you wanted to do when you wanted to do them. And you knew that when I do these things, I feel really good. And this really supports me in the life that I'm building, in the life that I'm creating. And you allowed yourself to recognize what season of life that you were in. But for some reason, because of social media, we often get misaligned, and that's why we're here. This podcast is all about aligning into that life that you are wildly obsessed with by clearing out the clutter that is getting in the way. And one of those 9 types of clutter is this expert advice that you take as gospel. And it's easy to do because, some of these experts just are like, oh my, like Tony Robbins, he's very convincing, but really give yourself permission to reflect back on that. Now I want you to think about the season of life that you're in right now. What would feel really good for you to do? What would feel like a really smooth morning routine for you? And again, these things aren't just about the activities themselves, but it's about the intention behind them. A few podcasts back, I talked about one of the easiest ways to change your life is to get intentional. Get really intentional. And with anything that you do, what is my intention with this? Why am I doing this? Is this thing that I'm doing bringing me closer to that thing that I want in my life, or those things that I want? How do you know what you want? What are your priorities in this season of your life? What are your priorities? What are your responsibilities in this season of your life? And what would feel good for you to do? Again, it's all about the intention behind it. And My client was trying to fit into her life a template that wasn't designed for her current phase. It's so easy to fall into the trap of comparing yourself to the experts or to these people that are all flashy and whatever on the internet. And the fact of the matter, and we all know this, that what you see is the highlight reel. Sometimes you see the behind the scenes, but usually it's the highlight reel. Rarely, if ever, you see the behind the scenes. So how do you begin to declutter this advice that has convinced you that, yes, this is how you're going to get your dream life, is by waking up at 5 o'clock and by doing an ice bath and some people, it's not recommended to do ice baths. There was a study that came out that it only has to be meaning the water only has to be 54 degrees or below in order for you to kind of have that cold plunge type experience. It doesn't have to be freezing cold water. There was a video that I watched of someone who did this cold shower thing, and she actually ended up having a stroke. I was like, oh my goodness. Be cautious when you take expert advice, quote unquote expert advice, and doing something that you really don't want to do. Really ask yourself, what is my intention behind this? Is this necessary? Do I have a health concern that could possibly prevent me from doing this or get worse if I do something like this? So how do you begin to declutter this unhelpful advice and start building a life that is truly yours, that you are truly and wildly obsessed with, that is not cluttered up? The first thing is self-reflection. Really ask yourself, what do you want your mornings or your days to feel like? Are you a morning person who jumps out of bed, or do you prefer to kind of wake up slowly? Are you motivated more in the afternoon or the evening? A lot of experts say work out in the morning. For intermittent fasting, fast until noon or 3 p.m. When I did intermittent fasting, I could not do that. I could care less about dinner. For me, I've always been a breakfast and lunch type of person. So when I did intermittent fasting, and when I do intermittent fasting, I get up, I have my coffee and my breakfast, I have a snack, and I have my big meal at 2:30, 3 p.m., and I stop eating by 4, and then I fast the rest of the day. So I'm sleeping through a large portion of my fasting. That worked perfect for me. Perfect. When I tried to fast during the morning and afternoon, it was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster. So take everything with a grain of salt, truly. And that brings us to step number 2, experiment. Allow yourself the freedom to experiment. Try out different routines. Try out different things. Make note of how each thing makes you feel. And again, what is your intention behind it? And do you actually need to do that thing in your life? This process is about discovery. It's about getting curious, not about getting it right on the first try, and not about doing all the things. One of the things that my client decided after we kind of went through this process together, she said, you know what? I want to watch my K-dramas while I ride my bike. And after I'm done riding my bike, then I'm going to stretch. That feels perfect. I had to look up what a K-drama was. I'm like, what is that? When I asked her, how does it feel to do that? She's like, oh my God, it feels so good. I'm like, perfect. Then that's what's right for you. It doesn't have to be what's right for me or what's right for the other person or the other person. Whatever is right for you, what feels good for you and is in alignment with the life you want to live and the results that you want to get and achieve, perfect. Who cares what anybody else thinks or says about it? That brings us to step number 3. So the first one, self-reflection. The second one, experimentation. The third one, simplify. Y'all knew that was coming, right? As you experiment and try out different things, you're going to find things that resonate more with you and things that don't. Simplify your routine by focusing on those things that make you feel good, that give you the energy and the feeling and the experience that you want to experience in your life. It's better to have a few meaningful habits than a long list of tasks and to-dos that make it feel like a chore and make you dread your daily routine. Again, whether it's in the morning, the afternoon, or the evening. Step number 4 in all of this is align 1 degree. Now, y'all know I have a book, The 1 Degree Shift, that helps you make these tiny little micro adjustments that help you align into the life that you want. Your life will evolve, and so should your routines. What works for you now? Y'all have heard me preach and teach this forever. What works for you now might not work in a year. What works for you today might not work tomorrow. So regularly check in with yourself and be ready to adapt and shift and make those tiny little micro adjustments, those tiny little 1-degree shifts daily. This is how we declutter the stuff that no longer serves us. Remember, the only expert on your life is you. Yes, it is very valuable to seek inspiration and learning and advice from others. But at the end of the day, the most aligned practices are the ones that are tailored to fit your own life, and they're tailored to fit by you. Let's continue this conversation and support each other in building the lives that we're not only obsessed with, but are genuinely ours. I invite you to share your experiences with decluttering all of that expert advice from your to-do list and from your mind and from your morning and afternoon and evening routines, and finding what truly works for you. If you're listening to this on YouTube, share them in the comments below. If you are listening to this on any one of the podcast platforms, click the link in the show notes, jump on over to this episode on YouTube, and let's have a conversation about the morning routines or daily routines that you've tried that you just can't seem to get a hang of. And also share with us what type of routine feels really good and really, really intentional for you. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, share with friends, and please leave a review. Your support helps this podcast to reach more people looking to declutter their lives and align into a life they are wildly obsessed with. I hope this serves you today. Remember, all it takes is a clear vision of what you want and the willingness to take one small degree shift in that direction daily to align into a life that you love. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. All links mentioned are in today's show notes.